So recently I ran a lesson that went horrifically, and yeah, I would argue it's one of the worst lessons I've ever taught, so let's talk about that. Write an essay about your future plans. Wasn't like anything I taught before.
You give me the worst anxiety every time I'm in your presence.
Very beginning, the get-go of the lesson was stress for all. They don't have a plan for their future.
I don't know. Nobody knows.
This story does ultimately have a happy ending.
I've had enough of playing games. Fucking hell.
The moment of this lesson which made my brain implode was at the end, after the bell rang. Hello guys and welcome back to my channel where I talk about Japan, the JET program, my travel experiences and so on. So if you don't want to miss any of that, then be sure to subscribe, please. But if you don't want to subscribe, that's totally cool. I forgive you. I have a new supervisor this year and he basically told me what he wanted to do this semester, which wasn't like anything I taught before. But yeah, he came at me quite last minute. So I want to do like 3 on essay writing, 4 doing some kind of group presentation, and 3 with some kind of interview at the end of it. And I was like, yeah, okay. But then later, when I actually sat and thought about it, I was like, essay writing? But like, at this point, there's really not long till class starts. I'm like, I just need to go with this. I've never taught writing, like, kind of more formally. It's a conversation class, essentially. I'm very much making it up as I go along. But let's split it up into, like, a lesson on the introduction, a lesson on the body, and a lesson on the conclusion. So the first lesson, which we're going to talk about today, we were just writing the introduction. And I'm just like, you know, it's just the introduction. That's easy. Nothing can go wrong, right?
These bitches have no idea what's in store for them tonight.
Also, I just want to say at this point as well, I did improve this lesson over the following few. It was really just the first time I taught it that it went horrifically, and then, you know, I'm not just going to continue to teach it in such a crappy way. I did improve it a lot, which I will explain at the end what I did to improve the lesson and stuff. Actually, this story does ultimately have a happy ending, so, you know, stay tuned for that. So, for the introduction, I thought, okay, let's do the first half of the lesson on like brainstorming and idea generation and do some warm-up kind of games to make it more fun. You know, I want to give them some fun in this essay writing lesson so they don't hate me forever and they can remember that, you know, I'm a cool teacher, you guys. I'm a fun one, I promise.
Not like a regular
teacher.
I'm a cool
teacher.
I wanted to do some speaking since we're going to be doing so much writing for the first few lessons, so I wrote some questions on the board like, how was your summer break? What did you do? Are you happy to be back at school? And we've done similar activities before where I just write, oh, how was your weekend? What did you do? I have them talk with their partner for a minute, ask each other the questions, and then I'll ask a few people to say to me and I guess to the class. So I was like, excellent, easy peasy introduction, get them talking and kind of a bit more lively. Did it go well?
No.
It did not. I let them talk amongst themselves and I was like, okay, so and so, how was your summer break?
Well, it doesn't have to... That's a good question. I don't know.
Ask someone else, they don't know. Ask someone else, they don't know. And I'm just like, what's going on? I'm like, was it good, bad, fun, boring, exciting?
I don't know. Nobody knows. That's the fuck of it all.
Anyway, I realised in later classes, because I wrote summer break and not summer vacation, that threw them off completely, and they were just like, I have no idea what the fuck that means, what does this question mean? Anyway, that was a mess. The very beginning, the get-go of the lesson was stress for all, so like, rip me. If you have any similar stories, comment them below, because I'd like to know I'm not alone. So I played a game which I've played before with them. It's a simple memory game where I put a sentence on the board. For example, I want to travel to ... and with their partner they'll be like, for example, oh, I want to travel to America, I want to travel to America and Scotland, and so on, and they just see how many they can remember. The sentence I gave them was, in the future, I want to ... I did some examples with my JTE, and then I let them go. And you know what? This was the one of the most successful parts of the lesson because they've done this before, they know what to do, so they did it. The reason I chose this game was because I thought, okay, when we move on to idea generation, they'll have some ideas in their head already. But ultimately, the point of this game was for them to have fun. And we've done this game enough times that it just wasn't that exciting for them.
I've had enough of playing games. Fucking hell.
Okay, so something I like to do when I'm doing a series of lessons is from the get-go, I think it's important for them to know the end goal so they understand why we're doing everything we're doing. So this is the point where I explain, okay, so we're going to do the topic of future plans for the next 3 lessons, and you're going to write an essay about your future plans, you know, introduction, body, conclusion. And I'd already asked the JTE in advance. I was like, they know what like introduction, body, conclusion means, right? And she was like, yeah. And they did, so that was fine. But you know, they obviously weren't thrilled to hear this. I could see the stress in their faces. So then we move on to brainstorming. I explain what brainstorming is, and on the board I basically do a huge example mind map. Like in the middle it says future plans, and I have it connected to career, study, travel, love, and like a blank one for them to put whatever they want. And I've got loads of simple examples for all of them, like career, oh I want to be a teacher, I want to be a doctor. For love, I want to get married, and so on. They do seem to understand this, although every time I say do you understand, it's like silence, and I really had to be like, guys, say yes or no. Everybody, 1, 2, 3, do you understand? And then I gave them a piece of paper with basically the same thing, and I was like, okay, I want you to brainstorm ideas for your future plan. And I was like, you know, you can talk with your partner, you can ask us questions, whatever, on you go. They understood the example. It's a very simple activity. Nothing can go wrong, right?
No.
Honestly, the amount of people which just stared at blank paper. Eventually I realised a couple things, which is either 1, they don't have a plan for their future, or 2, they just didn't know the English word. Like I remember there was one student who wanted to be a physiotherapist. Of course they don't know that English word, so they're just sat there like... And the thing is, none of them ask for help when they need it. And there's times when I'll go over to a student because I see they're struggling. I'm like, oh, can I help you with anything? And they'll be like... Or, oh, do you understand? Like, do you want any help? Do you get it? And like, they won't make eye contact with me. Like, imagine you're me and I'm the student and you've just asked me like, oh, do you need any help? They will absolutely not make eye contact. It's just like, oh my god, you guys.
You give me the worst anxiety every time I'm in your presence because you judge me.
I'm just saying I wanted to help you.
A lot of the kids had just written like 1 or 2 words here or there, but I was like, you know what, we need to move on because we need to spend a decent amount of time actually talking about how to write this introduction. Also, I did think about teaching vocabulary first for different things, different jobs and stuff, but then I was like, well, I don't want them all to have their future plans be about a career and studying, because A, that's not for everyone, and B, I don't want everyone's essays to be the same. Anyway, so we moved on. And I gave out a worksheet about the introduction, and it was a garbage worksheet. I know it was. Like, the top of the worksheet, it then had some questions which by answering they could then write something of that structure. So for the introduction I had 3 questions, and this part of the lesson went well because I went over the questions myself, then I gave them some time to talk with their partner and make sure they understood, and then I picked a few people to tell me what does this mean in Japanese. And you know, once some of the students have said it in Japanese, everyone 100% does get it. And then I went over the example answers, and after each one I'm like, do you understand? And they're like, yes, although I still have to push them to respond to me at all. And I basically underlined the parts they have to change. But now we have this locked in structure, so everyone's essays is going to kind of sound the same. So the examples I gave on the worksheet I tried to make a bit more interesting so they could see the kind of possibilities of what they could write. But that was a mistake, because they didn't understand those examples. I really should have just written the most basic examples and trust that the kids who are better at English and who find it easy will go a bit more above and beyond. So that was a struggle. And they all said, yes, I understand. Yes, I understand. Did they understand?
No!
Anyway, so eventually I'm like, okay, we've got 10 minutes, guys. Let's try and write our introductions. You can talk to your partner if you need help. You can ask me or whatever sensei. And I gave them out just essentially a blank piece of paper which just said at the top, use this paper to write your essay. And then... silence.
I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand, bitch. I don't understand.
So basically a number of things happened at this point. Students were either writing one-word answers to the questions, like, oh, what is the topic of your essay, future plans, not full sentences. Other students would literally write the questions and the answers, like number 1, da-da-da, number 2, da-da-da, and some of them would be writing both questions and answers. And a lot of students just stared at blank paper with a panicked look in their eye. But when I asked them, oh, do you need help? Do you understand? Yes, I understand.
Is that true?
It's very true.
I realized kind of eventually, I was like, okay, I think they're just a bit overwhelmed by a blank sheet of paper. It's a bit daunting for them. So I had the JTE explain again. You just need to replace the underlined parts of the sentences, guys. I think as well, in my worksheet, what confused them was the first example answers I gave. I wrote number 1, blah, 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 number 2, blah, 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 because I didn't want to just put a block of English and scare them with that and make it clearer which model answers answer which questions. And then the second example, I made it more paragraphy. So I think they were just confused by those two different structured examples. And yeah, it was a struggle. I had to keep getting the JTE to explain more and more in Japanese. And kind of eventually in the last few minutes, they were starting to get it. Some kids finished. Anyway, so that lesson kind of ended. And then here is the real killer. The moment of this lesson which made my brain implode was at the end, after the bell rang. So here's the real moment of the day. As the students are walking out, or start to walk out, one kid walks up to the JTE and asks, "Sensei, essay wa nan desu ka?"
That's so upsetting.
The teacher answers, explains what essay means. And all the kids around this kid are like, oh, okay. And I'm just like, bitch! I've been talking about essays this whole lesson, and not one of you thought to ask me, what is an essay? I'm like, okay, please write your essay. This paper is to write your essay. This is the introduction for your essay. You can brainstorm ideas for your essay. Not one person thought to ask, what does essay mean? Not even, like, they could have just asked the JTE in Japanese during the lesson. They waited till the end. They didn't know what essay means. Not a single kid.
I decided to give up.
I improved the lesson a lot over the following few times I taught it. So by like the whole second half of the week I was teaching it, it was going fine. It was going smoothly. I planned then the following 2 lessons about body and conclusion accordingly. So here's some things I changed. I made the examples a lot simpler and basic. I gave literal pictures of the worksheet they had to write it on, exactly how they should be writing it and stuff, diagrams and whatnot. The template page I gave them, I put Japanese instructions on it, or I had a JTE write some. I switched around. I now do the brainstorming before I explain to them about writing essays, and that's what they're going to do for the next 3 weeks, because they're just a bit more enthused, they're a bit more excited to do the brainstorming. It's just this fun, dumb little activity before all of their like hopes and dreams are crushed when I tell them they're going to be writing essays. Oh, also, after having picked up some common things which the students write, I started using those in my example brainstorming. So like, a lot of kids want to be a kindergarten teacher, so I would write on the board when I wrote about career, I was like, oh, maybe you want to be a kindergarten teacher and stuff, and then they can see the spelling and they can think, oh, I can write that, and maybe gives them a bit more confidence and so on. And I also let them brainstorm in Japanese, because ultimately I'm not going to check that. I don't care about that. That's literally just so they can get their ideas on paper. So, you know, they can translate a few keywords later themselves with a dictionary. And I'm sure I did a bunch of other stuff. I know that I made the future worksheets and PowerPoints and stuff a lot more kind of memey and fun. I put more Japanese on the worksheets. All of the future examples are a lot more simple. And even like when I taught the body, I followed the same structure of like, here's some questions you have to answer, here's the model answers with the underlined parts, you put them together, it makes your paragraph. And because eventually they got it with the introduction, they know exactly how that works for the body and so on. And so they're not as like daunted by the whole thing. They're a bit more almost excited, because, you know, I'm going around and I'm only correcting grammar and stuff if it's at a point where I don't understand what they're trying to say. So when I'm going around, I'm like, okay, good, well done. It's encouraging for them and it's good. What I think is really good is at the end of the day, although I wouldn't necessarily run these lessons again, ever, they're gonna have an essay they've written in English, which at their level they would have never otherwise done. So what did I learn? Don't leave lesson planning to the last minute, although it wasn't my fault this time necessarily. Push back when you disagree with your JTE. If I'd taken a minute at the time he told me about it to think about it, I would have been like, can we not do this? Or at least can we not do it immediately after summer break, you know? It's because it's okay to disagree with your JTE. Most importantly though, and I did know this, never ever assume that the children know anything if you have not taught them it before. Ever. And don't just ask them, do you understand? Make them show they understand. Ask someone to translate in Japanese or explain in another way or something. Anyway, so yeah, I've done the body. I've still got the conclusion to teach, but I'm confident about it. And if you're curious to know how the end result of all of this stress was, then comment it below and maybe I'll make like a follow-up video. Okay, bye!